I'm going to correct one thing in your introduction, Jack. You haven't raised 10,000. You've actually raised 11 because my wife and I are going to contribute to your efforts. So. I'm here because Jack invited me. I love seeing you all, but if any of you could learn how to say no to him, teach me how. I have no idea. I want to first say a special hello to a few people who I'm going to mention now and then refer to before I finish. Alex, Drake, Luke, Zach, and Ben Rosenthal, Olivia, Parashar, I think I've said it right, Sam Bradley, and Jaja Ibrakovich, wherever you are. Did I say it right? No? How do I say it correctly? Yeah, yell it out so I can hear.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, yeah. So these are children, offspring of my colleagues at Stonyfield. And I want to note them because I was here 52 Earth Days ago. And I want to tell you that their parents have jobs today growing the largest organic yogurt company on Earth. Jobs that did not exist 52 years ago. In fact, the organic industry did not exist 52 years ago. I can tell you that I lived here in the north end of Manchester, and when I would ride my bike or travel to school, we still had working farms between here and just, a mile from now. This was actually a farming area. You don't see any farms now, but I promise you they were all here. And so one of my first questions as a 7th grader, because we started at 7th grade at Derryfield in those days, was why? Why were the farms gone or going? We did our ecology club, we did Merrimack River water sampling. Some of you may know the Merrimack River was one of the 10th most polluted rivers in the United States. One night it literally caught on fire just above us in Hooksett. Rivers are not supposed to burn, last time I checked. And it brought the question, why? Why is the river burning? Why do we have so much pollution? I was a ski racer, and every spring we had a race up on Mount Washington. It's called the Inferno. And when I was a kid, you could see the Atlantic Ocean from the summit of Mount Washington. And by the time I was graduating Derryfield in '72, that view had been obscured, and nobody has ever seen the ocean from that view ever since. Why was the question I was asking. Of course, the answer was all the pollution from the eastern seaboard had made its way upstream and blocked our view and obscured our air, and of course we're breathing all of that. And that's because we've all had this, we as humans have had this myth of a place called away where we send our waste. And so I was asking these questions why, and fortunately I had a 7th grade teacher here named Kevin Cullen who would always ask the question, why not? And this was helpful for me because I was really struggling to understand these things as you were trying to understand what's going on. Why are humans leading to the extinction or near extinction of the species? Kevin taught us to really think differently, out of the box. This was the 60s. He introduced us to Helen and Scott Nearing, who maybe some of you have heard of. They wrote a book called Living the Good Life. But to make a long story short, what they were doing is they were living a zero-footprint life in eastern Maine. And we went and visited them on a weekend retreat. And so then I went off to Hampshire College and studied climate change. And again, this was the early days of climate change. But the science was clear then that we were warming our planet. And of course, I was asking why. But because of Kevin, I was starting to ask why not. And what happened was, I learned that agriculture, the very farms that used to be here, as they had disappeared, agriculture was now contributing between 10 and 12% of our global footprint. And that number was going up, mainly because of the use of fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, nitric oxide to be specific, which is far more impactful as a global warming gas than carbon, though we should be really focused on carbon. And the second reason is the way animals have been grown and raised in this country on feedlots, these large confined animal feedlots where we bring all the feed to the animals, had led to animals actually producing a lot more methane than they should, because mainly we're feeding them corn. And they're herbivores, most of these cows. They're not carnivores, but the net result is when you give them the wrong thing, they burp actually out this extra methane. And methane is 40 times more impactful as a global warming gas. So I was learning all of these things, and really because of Kevin Cullen, I started saying, well, why not? So I went off from my college to a place that was an institute dedicated to this question of why not. It was an ecological research think tank where in a building about 1/3 the size of this, on 1/10 of an acre, we could grow enough food to feed 25 families, 3 meals a day, 365 days a year, burning no fossil fuels. The sun would come in and it would heat these tanks of water. The tanks of water would be the radiant energy. We would have, a foot or two of snow outside, and yet the space was so warm because just the thermal mass, just collecting that sun. We grew butterflies, we had bananas, we had papayas, tropical fruits here in New England with 100% solar environment, burning no fossil fuels whatsoever. And I learned that with that kind of productivity, the question was, why not? Why couldn't this be done everywhere? And this led me into organics. And no surprise to you, I'm going to talk to you for a couple minutes about organic. It's the hallmark of Stonyfield. As I said, we're the largest organic company in the world. But why? Why is that? Why are we focused? Well, it turns out that with organic, you use no chemical fertilizers. So 0 nitric oxide being released. Turns out with organic, animals have to have access to pasture. They have to actually be on grass, which is the way they want to be. So there's far less methane. It turns out with organic, we sequester carbon. That is to say, we put carbon into the ground and take it out of the atmosphere. And we do it about 30% better than you do in conventional agriculture. It turns out for the 1 million family farms that have gone under since I was Jack's age here in Manchester, 1 million family farms, that the fastest growing trend in farming right now is organic. Stonyfield proudly supports almost 2,000 organic family farms now, and they're all profitable and they're all growing, and their kids are finding futures in agriculture because with organics, what's happening is not only do they get a better pay price, but because they're sequestering carbon, they don't need to spend so much money on fossil fuel-based fertilizers, which, by the way, with the war and all that's going on right now, your gas pump, you see it if you guys fill up with gas, or your parents do. Fertilizers have gone through the same thing. They've gone up almost 100% in cost. So our farmers are insulated from that. Our farmers are actually getting higher and higher yields. And so I'm going to just kind of hit you with a few things that I've learned in this odyssey that began right here with the why not question, just to give you some sense of what we've been accomplishing there. For starters, did you know organic cows actually live twice as long as conventional? They literally, the veterinarians have nothing to do on organic farms, and they will tell you that. Why is that? They're healthier. They're getting access to outdoors. They're not eating chemicals. They're not getting antibiotics. They're not getting hormone injections. We have an operation in Brazil where our sugar comes from, 35,000 acres. And not only by going organic have we avoided all use of pesticides and herbicides and chemical fertilizers, most of which are also carcinogenic, cause cancer, but we've actually had 10% higher yields. And the best of all, we've improved the soil carbon. In other words, what I was talking about earlier, taken carbon out of the atmosphere, put it in the soil, and now we've actually built carbon farming. We're literally taking it out of the air, and that's what we're going to have to do to reverse climate change. Best of all, over 300 species have returned to these properties. So when you're asking what's going on with the orangutan, it's because we've wiped out food chains everywhere, as I know you understand, but everyone should understand. Our choices, your choices when you're buying food, when you're buying cosmetics, when you're buying clothing, they really count, because those are the things that add up to either creating the sort of farm that we've got with Stonyfield, with the sugar and the dairy farmers, or the alternative, which is something that is heading us to certain problems for you and your generation. Over here at UNH, we've measured side by side an organic dairy next to a conventional dairy. One of the biggest problems with dairy farming is nitrogen runoff into local rivers, and this is what was happening on the Merrimack back in my day. But on the organic farm, side by side, and we have a lot of Derryfield grads who've gone on and studied over there and measured this, there's literally 0 nitrogen running off into the nearby stream. So organic, again, when you buy and you choose organic, whatever brand, by the way, this is not just an advertisement for Stonyfield, whatever you buy, bread or milk or you name it, you are helping to keep nitrogen on the land, in the soil, helping to create these ecosystems that are building back, again, 300 species in the case of our farms. You are helping the kind of thing that, for example, we just did in Canterbury, New Hampshire. If you know Brookford Farm, any of you know Brookford? Some of you have seen it. So Brookford was a 40-year turf farm. And what that means is that for 40 straight years, they would come in and they would strip off a layer of topsoil with the turf that was used for golf courses and lawns. So if you see that nice layer that gets laid on your new lawn, don't forget that underneath it is some topsoil that was taken from somewhere. And the net result is 5 feet of topsoil got removed over 40 years. And by the time we bought it, it was a sand pit. Literally, there was no soil left. And at Brookford, in 10 years, using hogs and chickens to follow around, the chickens go out on the land, they chew and they eat everything and poop into the soil and all of that stuff. And then the hogs come along and turn that in. We've actually turned it into brown, beautiful soil with incredible carbon sequestration. Right here, you can see it, it's 18 miles, 20 miles north of here. And so I just want to simply say that first question I asked, why not, has really been what has led to all of these innovations. Organic today is a $62 billion industry. It didn't even exist when I was here. And I want to just leave you with a sort of a big picture of what I'm talking about, because the real point I'm making, and the reason I'm mentioning our fellow Stonyfielders' children and offspring, is that, like I said, their parents are in jobs that didn't exist when I was your age. And I don't know what's ahead for you all when you get to be our ages, or when you're out in the workplace. But I can tell you this, the biggest opportunities are in green. The biggest opportunities are in fixing the mess that we're leaving you. The biggest opportunities are in putting carbon into the soil, converting the sun's energy into power. Alex Drake's mom is actually involved with putting charging stations all over New Hampshire right now. This is the way we're going to be driving. This didn't exist in my day, right? The solar cells that we put on the roof up here. So you need to understand, you're looking at an alum. Much of what I'm talking about did not exist. Picture yourselves with your next 60 seconds. Picture what is coming for you. And I can just tell you, as long as you ask this question, why not? Keep asking, why not do it this way? Why not do it that way? The way you're doing in robotics classes, the way you're doing in so many of your classes here. That is the path to a more sensible future. And the last thing I want to say to you is, it doesn't have to be all this kind of, the sky is falling. We've had a blast in the years that we've been building Stonyfield. We had our 39th birthday last Saturday. We've enabled people to adopt thousands and thousands of cows. You say, what's he talking about, adopting cows? Well, we had to figure out a way. All the other big companies had much more money than us. When we were asked to do advertising, we had no money for advertising. So instead, we did have cows. So we invited people to send in 5 yogurt tops. This is all the way back in 1984. And they would get to adopt one of our live cows. They would get a photograph of their cow, and they would, in those days, get a letter from their cow twice a year. Now the cows blog and tweet and send their and send their social media out. But the cows, what they're talking about is things like carbon offsets, like carbon sequestration. And we've had, again, thousands and even tens of thousands of people adopt. When we wanted to introduce our yogurt into Chicago, we knew we didn't have the money to go out and buy advertising. So instead, we went on the train station platform at the Chicago Transit Authority, and we greeted commuters when they were coming off the trains. We knew that by taking a train instead of driving, you are avoiding 42 pounds of particulate into the atmosphere every month by not driving your car. And these poor people who just thought they were riding the convenient way to work, they would get off the train and we would hand them a coupon and a spoon made from recycled yogurt cups and a yogurt, and thank them for riding the train. We're giving them hugs and reminding them that this was actually a heroic thing, riding the train. When we went to Texas, where they don't tend to believe in trains, we know that if people keep their tires properly inflated, you can get 3 mile per gallon increase in fuel efficiency. 3 mile per gallon would offset all of New Hampshire's entire energy budget if the country got another 3 mile per gallon increase. So we went off on the side of the road with big signs that said, "We support inflation." And people would pull off and we would pump their tires and give them a tire gauge with a little coupon and a yogurt, and they would drive off thinking, wow, I'm doing something heroic. So my point is very simple. Ask why not. Have some fun. This world is, the bad news is we've messed it up, prior generations. The good news is the job opportunities in this green space are just absolutely extraordinary. And what I've seen just walking around this morning, the energy, the commitment, the enthusiasm that you've all got, I know that when 400 of you are asking why not, I have hope. So I thank you for inviting me. I thank you for celebrating. Jack, thank you for all you do. Happy Earth Day, everybody.